Hi and welcome back to Canada Top to Bottom. Today we're going to be talking about a very important subject, and that is how to claim refugee status in Canada. In recent months and years, the migration of refugees into Canada has increased, and for a huge number of people who find themselves in a refugee-like situation, they may have no idea where to even begin making a claim. The information we're going to give you today is not given from a legal standpoint. It is simply to give you a starting point if you personally are looking to claim refugee protection in Canada, or if you are helping someone through this process. We will talk you through the steps of how to get started making a refugee claim in Canada and how to apply for permanent residence as a refugee.
To begin with, for immigration purposes, Canada recognises both convention refugees and persons in need of protection. Although there are similarities between them, these are two distinct categories, and you will need to decide which one is most relevant to your situation. A convention refugee is defined as a person who has a well-founded fear of persecution for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. To be classed as a convention refugee, a person must be outside each of their countries of nationality or residence, if they have more than one, and is unable or unwilling to use the protection of those countries, or unable or unwilling to return.
A person in need of protection is a person whose removal to their country of nationality or of former residence would subject them personally to a danger of torture, risk to their life, or to a risk of cruel and unusual treatment or punishment. In addition, the person is unable or unwilling to use the protection of the country. The risk would be faced by the person in every part of that country and is not faced generally by other individuals in or from that country, and the risk is not caused by the inability of that country to provide adequate health or medical care.
One thing to make clear is that a refugee is not the same as an immigrant. An immigrant in Canada is simply a foreign national from another country who has chosen to move to Canada permanently and start their new life. A refugee is a person who has been forced to flee their home country due to fear or a risk to their life and is unable or willing to return home.
It is also important to point out here that making a claim as a refugee is not an alternative to the traditional Canadian immigration routes, and it is not an easy route to permanent residence in Canada. Quite the opposite. Claiming refugee status is an extremely long, complicated and stressful process, and one which should not be approached lightly. Making a claim by no means guarantees that it will be accepted. Indeed, your claim may not even be referred for a decision. It is up to you to prove that your claim and your reasons for claiming refugee status are worth considering, and you will have to provide strong evidence to support your claim.
If a refugee claimant is found to be lying about their story or their experiences, they may face immediate deportation from Canada and be banned from ever re-entering. Another important point is that not everyone is eligible to make a claim for refugee protection. For example, if you've been convicted of a serious criminal offence or have previously made a refugee claim in Canada and had that claim denied, you will not be eligible to make a claim.
So, let's take a look at the programs Canada has in place for refugees arriving into the country. The Canadian refugee system has two main parts: the In Canada Asylum Program for people making refugee protection claims from within Canada, and the Refugee and Humanitarian Resettlement Program for people who need protection from outside Canada.
Refugee claimants who've made their way to Canada and arrived at the border will be assessed as part of the In Canada Asylum Program, which aims to provide refugee protection to people in Canada who have a well-founded fear of persecution or are at risk of torture or cruel or unusual punishment in their home country.
However, it is also possible to start the process of claiming refugee status from outside Canada. In this situation, the person must still be outside of their home country or the country where they are in danger. For example, refugees who are forced to flee their home country and are living in a refugee camp in a neighbouring country. If a person is still in the country they are trying to flee, they will not be eligible to claim for protection in Canada. People in this situation cannot apply directly to Canada for resettlement. They need to be identified for resettlement by the United Nations Refugee Agency, or the UNHCR, along with private sponsors. You will need to contact the UNHCR to explain your situation, and start this process. The link to the UNHCR is in the description box below, where you will be able to search for your country of interest and also in multiple languages.
There are a number of different ways that a refugee can be sponsored from outside of Canada, such as government-assisted refugees, which means that the Canadian government promises to support you financially for the first year after you arrive in Canada. There is also a program called the Blended Visa Office Referred BVOR program, where private individuals who are Canadian citizens and permanent residents team up with the Canadian government to become private sponsors for refugees. The private sponsors commit to providing 6 months of financial support and 12 months of social, emotional and settlement support, and the Government of Canada provides the other 6 months of financial support. Finally, there are institutions such as churches, charities and private institutions which can also apply to sponsor refugees who are referred from outside of Canada.
So where can you make your claim for refugee protection? If you arrive at the Canadian border, either at an airport or a land border, you will make your refugee claim to a CBSA officer, which stands for the Canada Border Services Agency. This is the government agency who will start the processing of your asylum claim.
If you are already in Canada, rather than at a port of entry, you will make your claim for asylum at an IRCC office in Canada, which stands for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. Wherever you apply for protection, once you've made your claim with the authorities, either the IRCC or the CBSA will decide whether it can be referred to the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada, or IRB. If the referral is approved, the IRB will assess your asylum claim and decide whether you qualify for refugee protection in Canada.
Something to be very aware of is that Canada has an agreement with the United States called the Safe Third Country Agreement. This agreement says that people who want to make a refugee claim must do so in the first safe country they arrive in. So if you first arrive into the US and then travel to Canada through a land border, you should have applied for protection in the US first, and therefore will not be eligible to make a refugee claim in Canada, unless you qualify for an exemption. For example, if you are an unaccompanied minor, or if you have family in Canada. There is a link below to the Safe Third Country Agreement and its rules.
After you've submitted your claim at a port of entry, such as an airport or land border crossing, the officer you deal with will decide whether your claim is eligible. If it is, you will receive a notice from the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada about a date for a refugee hearing. It is strongly advised that you use a representative for this hearing to give you the best possible chance of success. The hearing is where you must argue your case and convince the hearing official that you should be offered protection in Canada. As well as attending a hearing, you must also complete a medical exam and may be required to attend a scheduled interview. Don't approach this lightly. You will be thoroughly questioned and scrutinised, and it can be quite a stressful experience. If your claim is decided to be ineligible, it won't be referred to the IRB and you will be issued a removal order to leave Canada immediately. You may have the right to appeal to the Refugee Appeal Board if your claim is rejected, and it is essential that you have an experienced lawyer to help you through this process, as there are very strict timelines and rules to adhere to.
Once you have made your claim, if it is found to be eligible, you will be given a number of forms to complete. These are a Refugee Protection Claimant Document, which will help you get access to the Canadian Health Services, a confirmation of referral letter, which confirms your claim has been referred to the Immigration and Refugee Board of Canada, instructions about completing your medical exam, and a basis of claim form, which is extremely important.
The basis of claim form is where you present all the information about your refugee protection claim, giving details about yourself, your family, your documents and your travel history, and most importantly, full details and background about why you are claiming refugee protection in Canada. Again, it's recommended to use a professional consultant or lawyer to help you complete this form, especially if English or French is not your first language. The information provided in this form may be the deciding factor in your refugee claim. Be aware that you only have 15 calendar days to complete your basis of claim form and submit it to the IRB's Refugee Protection Division office. If your claim is accepted and you are given refugee status, you will be referred to the government's resettlement programme and given Canadian permanent residence. but don't expect this to happen overnight. Remember that this is an extremely long process and could take months or even years, so be prepared for a long wait.
If you are already in Canada, the application process is slightly different. Your first port of call will be an IRCC office, and you should submit your claim online through the Canadian Refugee Protection Portal. You will still need to complete all the same documents, including the very important basis of claim form, but you will need to make sure you have access to a scanner or a camera so that you can submit electronic copies of your documents. Someone can help you do this, either a friend or a paid representative who can actually submit the claim on your behalf, but you will need to make sure that you mention this on your form, that someone is helping you.
Understandably, a lot of refugee claimants want to know whether they can work whilst they are waiting on a decision of a refugee claim. And the good news is that you can if, in your situation, you need to earn money to pay for food, clothing and shelter. If you've made a refugee claim in Canada, you can also apply for an open work permit at the same time, which means you can work for any employer in Canada in any industry. This doesn't, however, apply to your family members unless they are also applying for refugee status. When you complete your refugee claim application, you will be asked whether you would like to request a work permit. You need to just select yes here, which means you don't need to submit a separate application or pay extra fees. If you're eligible for a work permit, it will be mailed to you after you complete your medical exam.
The final thing we are going to talk about today is the correct documentation and what to do if you don't have it. When making a refugee claim, having some way of establishing your identity is essential. The IRB states that you must show evidence of who you are by submitting high-quality copies of any official, original documents which include your name and your date of birth on them. For example, a passport, national identity card, birth certificate, or marriage certificate.
However, due to the nature of a refugee claim and the fact that a lot of refugees are forced to flee their country under impossible circumstances, it is possible that refugees are perhaps more likely than other foreign nationals to be without identity documents. As well as this, they may not be able to simply replace their documents by contacting the government of their home country. Again, the IRB states that if you do not provide high-quality copies of original identity documents or other documents in support of your claim, you will have to explain at your hearing why you do not have them and show everything you did to try to get them. You may, in exceptional circumstances, be given an exemption, but you will need to prove a very strong case as to why you cannot provide documents to prove who you are and where you've come from.
Okay, so that's all for today. This is a very important and very difficult subject area, and the process of applying for status as a refugee is complicated and stressful. We hope we have given you a starting point to begin your claim and answered some of your questions around refugees in Canada. See the links below for a lot more on the subject and let us know if you have any more questions.